And we are live. JT here, and welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching on YouTube or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focused on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest. I had the opportunity to catch up with him live and in person a few months ago at an event, and sort of planted the seeds that wanted to bring him into the huddle and just learn more about his journey. My guest in the huddle today is the assistant head coach and is currently serving as a defensive coordinator at Queen's University. My guest in the huddle today is Coach Ryan Bechmanis. How are you today, brother?
Doing well, thank you. Appreciate you having me on. It's been I know we've chatted about this for a while, but I'm glad we're able to finally make it work, and excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely, brother. And before we get kicked off, pun intended, I just want to take a moment to count my blessings. For me, it's a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find the days where I'm most intentional, most consistent counting my blessings. I do find those days are filled with a little bit more love, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So just want to thank you again for blessing us with some of your time and energy here today.
Appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for taking the time and doing what you're doing with this. It's always great to listen to, and nice to have a conversation about football and life as well, and the balance within it.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious, one of the first things that we always like to do in the huddle is to remind people that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a coaching colleague and a great friend that would always remind us, hey, we all have these things that make us unique and different. Our responsibility is to celebrate them. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact about you that maybe a lot of people don't know that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Oh, that's a great question to start with. Part of it's I think it's a bit of a diverse background in terms of where my family's from. I had Eastern European roots with my mom and dad. My mom's parents were actually over in the Czech Republic at the time of World War II and emigrated back over to Canada throughout that time after. So some history tied to over there, and my dad's side of the family being from Latvia and Eastern Europe. And I got the opportunity to go back to when I played in Europe after I finished playing my football career at Queen's and got my degree here. I got the chance to go over for the summer, travel around a little bit, and experience some of the history on my mom's side of the family being in Czech Republic. So I think that's being able to play over there and have those kind of Eastern European roots is a bit, but maybe not as well known about me, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. I love, like you talked about, like the importance of like having that diverse background, those diverse lived experiences. What I find unique though is that you are not the first Queens coach that has spent time after their U Sport playing days to spend time over in Europe, continuing to, pursue their love of football. So I'm curious, how do you think that those experiences living and playing abroad, how do you think that that has shaped you as you've embarked on this journey of coaching and leadership?
I I, I think it was just it's a great start and a reminder that not everything is the high performance level that we see it here. And you come from the university background, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have some teammates over in Denmark, and they called and said we need another guy, and brought me over. And then understanding just the great people over there and the people you meet, and from different walks of life. So we played in a semi-pro league, so to speak, but there were people that had full-time jobs that were working and grinding through the day that that did it just for the love of the game, and they were so welcoming and so open. And I think that had a profound impact. And just, hey, there's the love of the game, and they were doing it for the love of football, not, and we were looking at it more of an experience and a job, so to speak, and a chance to maybe avoid the real world for a little bit. But just getting that experience, getting the understanding of the different walks of life that people can bring, that this game can bring people together with, definitely impacts the start of the journey for me. And let alone having to be kind of like the player coach. So it's one thing to do it, it's one thing to coach it, but it's another thing to do it at the same time. And we had a ton of fun with it, and it was just a great experience overall to kind of start, and a reminder that football is a great vehicle to leverage life with. And if it wasn't for football, I don't think I would have gone over to Europe and traveled around in the way that I did, and through the time that I did. So it's just a reminder that use football as much as you can. Don't let the game use you.
Mm. I love the simplicity of that reminder, right? And I love how you talk about like football as a vehicle, right, to teach and reinforce greater life lessons. So I'm curious, your journey was first as a high quality athlete, and you transitioned to becoming a high quality coach and doing it at the same time. So I'm curious, what is a life lesson that you've taken from sport? And again, I know there's many that you find applies well to other areas of your life today.
I think one of the biggest things, honestly, is having to be organized, to be, um, between your football, your academics, your life part, and just the organizational skills that you can take from sticking to the structure that football brings, and bringing that structure to life, and just in terms of how you manage your time, how you communicate with people. Right now, it's like almost how do you organize the kids' schedules around both work schedules, and trying to see friends and see family and do all that stuff. So I think that's a big thing that I always taken is just how to schedule and how to organize, and how to make sure you're prioritizing, more importantly, what is important. um, Without the schedule organization, it's hard to fit those priorities in. And the priorities definitely change, as we were talking about as we got on the call today. With kids and stuff now, that they become the priority, but just making sure that you're able to do everything that is of priority to you, and without kind of the experience of playing, coaching, trying to be a university athlete, and doing all that stuff, I don't know if I'd have that, the level of organization or priorities that I do now.
Mm. It's interesting that you talk about, the importance of being organized, right? The importance of like clearly defining what your priorities are, what's important to you. I had an opportunity at an event recently to connect with one of your student athletes. And it was interesting that when we were talking about, what's at top of mind for you right now, he identified like really trying to get clear on what's important to him. And he had an
Yeah.
idea, but really it's like those priorities, like are the daily activities, aligned with where you say you want to go.
Mhm.
I'm curious, you've been coaching a while and been leading for a while. Do you find this idea of priorities, especially in a highly demanding environment like Queens, both academically and athletically, do you think it's easy? It's getting easier? Is it harder kind of to help student athletes to become more organized and better understand their
Um,
priorities?
yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just different. I don't know if it's easier or harder, because I don't think it's ever really easy. I think it's just different than it was maybe 10 years ago. There's lots going on, obviously, with the way people can leverage social media now for whether it's employment, whether it's for fun, and vice versa. I just think that adds a whole different element into it. And I think as everybody, like the generations go, everything just changes a little bit. So I don't know if it's easier or harder. It's just different challenges around things, and different ways to prioritize, and more importantly, different distractions that you have to sift through to figure out what's important and what's not. So I think there's always just the differences in there. And I wouldn't say it's easier or harder. It's just, honestly, it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's a great point, right? That, it's interesting as we look back, and I mean, we're sort of at that same life stage, right? Where it's funny,
Yeah.
every generation thinks they have their things a little bit more figured out than what, the generation previous or current
Yeah.
generation. But like you said, the distractions are just different, right? And
Yeah.
then how quickly can you drown out the noise? How quickly can you go from distracted, which we all get to becoming
Yep.
focused?
Hmm. And it's that's the challenge, and especially at the student athlete world. it's tough because you're doing things at a higher level regardless of where you are than the regular student body.
Yeah.
And to be able to get the social experience you crave at a university without compromising your school or compromising your training is a tough balance to get. Um, and it just takes a while, and it's not an easy thing to do to be at that high performance level on both, because you have to sacrifice some of the social at times.
Mhm.
If you do it right, I think you can do everything successfully and get the social experience you want. But having those priorities, you kind of find out fast what's important and what you're able to do, and everybody's different within that. Everybody can have a different level of a social experience based on the person that they are, and based on and how they go about things. So it's just working individually with the student athletes to get that schedule, to get that routine going, so they can get everything they want out of this experience. Because at the end of the day, going to university is about getting the best experience for you,
Mhm.
and making sure you're maximizing your priorities through that. And you got to work with the student athletes just to make sure that they're going to the right direction. They have their priorities in line, and they're seeing the kind of end goal and how to work through it, which is a fun part of the job, is to work with the guys doing all that stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm curious, one of the things, before we went live, we talked about this idea. One of the unique things about your journey is, you're Queens alum. Yeah, your adventure took you other places, right? Over
Yeah.
in Europe, to Carleton, and then you came back. So it's kind of cool that, at least from my perspective, that you get to help sort of build the foundation of the next iteration of Queens football.
Yeah.
What has that experience been like coming home and really, just building and helping to build this next version of Queens
Yeah.
football.
It's honestly, it's awesome. It's one of the biggest reasons I came back, is to be at the alma mater, and you're just passionate about the city, the campus, what being an alumnus from this university means. And
Mhm.
it's just trying to connect our guys with the great history and tradition of other guys that have been through this program, and their journeys. So to find the common ground with people, and then just to help, and honestly to watch what these student athletes can do on and off the field, especially at Queens, is just outstanding. And just to see what the careers some of the guys I had coached the first time around are doing now, and what the careers our guys are going to get to,
Mhm.
whether it's pro football or other. And I think that's just one of the unique special things about Queens, and why it's so fun to be back here, is just to be able to reconnect with old teammates, reconnect with old players that I had coached, and watch this new group of men kind of go through and become great at what they're going to do down the road, is just really fun to see. And it adds a little bit of extra, just because it is so meaningful to be a Queens alum to me, and to be a part of the program, to see how far our universities come in a variety of factors, whether it's just facilities or processes and things like that, and see how things have changed and how they've developed since I was a student, and let alone when I coached the first time around here. So it's just fun to see the development, the growth, and the passion that's involved from top down at this university, and to be able to get that into the new players that we have here, and connecting them with life after football is pretty fun.
I love that you shared, what makes Queen so special, right? And it's interesting. Obviously there's this rich tradition of excellence, right? I mean, we're talking, you know, decades and decades of people that have been there, that have done that have helped create this. But the interesting thing is, it just feels different. Like anyone that's
Yeah.
been to Queens in the last few years knows that there's just something, there's a feeling that you get around when they're around the coaches, the support staff, the student athletes. So I'm curious, what what is it that makes Queens such like a special place to be? What is from your perspective?
For me, it's just the passion that's involved, and how much the everybody cares. The support for the student athletes when they're here, from the department to the coaching staff to all their teammates, and the alumni. They're just so vested. They care a ton, and they're passionate about it. There's just that factor that Queens has in terms of that, with the traditions. I think of the university definitely help, and how much they value the alumni, the homecoming, and those types of things. But just the experience that people have here, and knowing how football has shaped them, in terms from the alumni side, how they've shaped their career, what it's been now, and giving them the tools to be successful down the road, with whether it's the time management organization, just being around other people that are like-minded, I think that goes a long way in your university journey. And because they had such good experiences here as a student and a student athlete, I think they're more passionate and more willing to give back and be a part of it. And to see that connection on a daily basis, I think is something that makes Queens pretty special, in my opinion.
Mhm. It definitely feels different. One of the things that I found really cool watching is just clarifying like what the culture is at Queens, right? And I think
Yeah.
if you walk around the building, if you see it in the messaging in terms of, you guys talk about like what it means to be an OKG or just I think even the little touches around the pavilion, around the stadium that just show this is what is important. Um, what do you think has what do you think has helped this turnaround of the culture? Like it's been pretty quick, right?
Yeah. I,
It feels like a long time, but what have you guys actively been doing to sort of shift that culture in a relatively short period of time?
I think a lot of it stems obviously from Coach Snyder. I think some of this stuff in terms of tying the tradition back in, and making it into the forefront and showing that it's a privilege to be able to play here, and just what being a Gale means and the never surrender type attitude. And I think being able to do that while working together with the brotherhood that we have and focusing on that and making sure that that's in the forefront of everything that we're doing, and understanding that our first goal is to be the most respected team on campus and in the community, and referencing that and highlighting the little things that our student athletes are doing. It may seem like little things, but they actually are big things in terms of a student athlete helping somebody in the community, or a student athlete getting a glowing reference from a professor and things like that, that we've been able to highlight in our team meetings and showcase, hey, this is what an OKG is, and it's nothing to do with football on this one. And I think it kind of breeds the culture in there, and to put an emphasis on that, and to make sure that the guys are doing things the right way and showing them how that translates from just life to on the field. I think we've done a good job of showing that, and obviously we've had the buy-in from all of the players and all of the coaches, and getting us on the same page, and having like-mindedness on the staff, working with a great group of people that not only are good at X's and O's and good at football, but care about the people involved. And I
Mhm.
think when the student athletes can see that you care about them as a person and that you're willing to help them, regardless whether it's football, school, or life, I think you get a better buy-in from the players. And so throughout the recruiting process and their time here, we just try to show the student athletes that we care, and we get the buy-in from them. And I think a lot of people are doing it that way as well too, which is great. And it's really what matters is the people. And I think we've done a good job of surrounding ourselves with great coaches, great support staff in the program, having guys that have been around for a long time that just bleed kind of tricolor, and they can see the passion, and it just becomes infectious that way. And I think that's kind of the key to what we've been doing, is just having people on the same page, working towards the right goals, and reinforcing those things too, because it's one thing to do it, but to be able to reinforce it on a daily basis is something that really breeds the buy-in from everybody, top to bottom.
Mm. I love that you talked about that, right? Like that idea of like you got to show others that you truly care, right? It's easy to
Yeah,
say you care, but it takes it's a little harder to consistently show you.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, I'm curious, how important is that when you are, recruiting, when you're trying to build those bridges of trust with, a parent or loved one that's really entrusting their son with you? How important is that ability to show you care? Like again, curious from your perspective.
I think it's honestly one of the most important things, because you can say anything you want to a recruit and that they may believe you, but you have to be able to back it up. And if your players, when they're here, but they're not seeing what you told them or what you promised them on the recruiting trail, then it's just going to go sideways.
Mhm.
So I think it's very important to kind of, to be honest, to be upfront with who you are through the process, and be very transparent through everything. Because if you're not, you may get away with it for a little bit, but it'll ultimately catch up to you. And it's way better to kind of even be a little bit harsher up front, so to speak, with the chances and things like that. But be honest, then go the other way, and it ends up circling back on you, and you get people that are unhappy in here, and then that's it's just so tough to deal with if you get somebody that's unhappy in the program. And
Mhm.
we understand that you can't please everybody, but if you're honest and transparent through things, and you generally have the best interest at heart, and you can separate the football versus the person. I think that's the big thing to be able to do, and you always got to be conscious of it. But I think it's very important to be able to be transparent through with parents and the recruits coming in about this is who we are, this is how we're going to go, and you can talk to our players and they're going to give you that exact same feedback. And I think that's really a testament of the program Coach Snyder's been able to run and organize here, is that everybody is in line with that, and understanding of what we put out to the recruits is what we're actually following through with. And I think it's very paramount to be able to do that.
Mhm. I love what you shared, like that ability and willingness, right? To have
Yeah,
hot conversations, right? To have honest, open, transparent conversations, which, as you alluded to, they're not always warm and fuzzy, but it's much better to truly, be honest, open, transparent, because then, it just allows people to make sure that you're both on the same page.
for sure. Yeah, you kind of have to be at this light, and I think we all do. We all understand that in staff, and have done a great job to kind of exude that going forward. And it's something you got to keep doing, because with the landscape changing, it's so easy to kind of have something negative affect you, and you kind of just got to overcome and understand the ups and downs of a university career. And not everything is going to be easy, and you're trying to find the people that want to work and breathe through adversity, and because that's something you're going to face every day on in football, and you're also going to face in life as well. So learning how to overcome that is big, and being there to support people through it is something I think we do a great job of here.
Mhm. Definitely. And what's interesting is I think back to, the number of, Team Ontario alum the last few years that have,
Yeah,
decided to make Queens their home. And, I think of those young men, and, those are, just great. Yeah, they're great student athletes, but like they're great human beings. They're please and thank you kind of young men,
yeah.
and they're just great academically. So it's really cool to see like that's who, the program's attracting now.
For sure, and it's a great program, and people that play for Team Ontario and in the Canada Cup, I think it's a great kind of litmus test of how university is going to go. It's a high intensity tournament. It's competitive to make it. There's probably 250, 300 kids trying out for a 45 to 40 person roster, and it shows just people willing to overcome adversity, and it gives them a great opportunity to see what a university experience is going to be like. And people that play that and go through that tournament understand that, and it's a big thing, because if you know what you're getting yourself into, it makes that challenge a little bit easier. If you're going in and you have no idea what this landscape is going to look like, it becomes a little bit harder, and there can be that culture shock in there a little bit. And I think people that have come through that Canada Cup experience, and we've seen it with the Ontario kids, know how to handle living in res, doing all that stuff, turning around from game plan to game plan in 2 days at that tournament, because you're facing a different offense or defense. There's a lot of adaptation that has to take place, and people that can roll with those punches can adapt to the university setting pretty fast, where sometimes other people, it may take them a little while longer. And it doesn't mean you don't recruit those people, because you still do, but there's something to be said about somebody that plays for that Team Ontario and in that Canada Cup.
Yeah, it's interesting, again, for anyone watching and listening, we're having this conversation after our top 90 Red Black weekend. When we were kicking off the 2-day event, I said, hey, you've earned the privilege to be here, celebrate that, but understand the next 48 hours are an ongoing job interview, right?
100%.
We are going to see, we're going to push you, we're going to test you, and like you said, we're going to see how do you handle that pressure. And like you said, typically the ones that can navigate the ebbs and flows, we view it as our responsibility is to put them into those kind of environments, so that when they get to you at the U Sport level, they're better prepared to handle the rigors of being, a student athlete and being a high level one.
100%. And sometimes it's not just the on-field stuff you're looking for. It's like, how are they conducting themselves in meetings at the meal hall and wandering around? Are they respectful and responsible as they're going through somebody else's campus and when they're at the tournament? Because if they're not, it's almost like, okay, what student athlete are you going to get if they're doing that at this tournament, versus if they're a great person there, then you kind of have the assumption that they're going to be pretty well when they get to you. But if it goes the other way, it's kind of a bit of a red flag, and you almost reevaluate and have to do some more digging. And
Mhm.
that's part of the reason, like, just to see the kids outside the football field and how they're interacting is a big testament of what kind of character student athlete you're going to get, because it's hard to change kind of that part of a student athlete when they get to your level.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious from your perspective, we live in an interesting time where, when we were growing up, there was a bit, social media, wasn't a thing. So there was sort of
Nope.
this, we didn't really have this platform where, you put in a situation where emotions are high, but then, you can communicate that either, through social media, through text, where you can
Yeah.
put things out there. Do you think that our student athletes now understand that, decisions you make, like the ability to pause between the emotion and the action, like, do you think that lesson's been lost in these days?
A little bit, I think so, yeah, because you can convey something without repercussion by putting it out just on whether you're Instagramming or tweeting something out there. You can do that and not necessarily get any repercussion of it. Whereas if you were to go up and say something to somebody that you maybe not at the right time or moment, there's going to be a repercussion to that. So I think part of that lesson is lost, but I think there's more awareness around it now, and everybody in the high school and the younger environments are understanding that, and all the coaches and support people and teachers that are around are conveying that to the kids at a little bit higher level than it may have been done 5-10 years ago, because it was all so new. So I think the lesson is slowly creeping back in, but it's definitely different than it was, that's for sure, because just how easy you can vent on something that you may regret 10 minutes later, and it's still out there, is tough. And it's in the heat of the moment, it's hard as a young person not to do that now, because it's so easy to do it, whereas we just didn't even have that opportunity. I don't think we had cell phones until well into university for me, or just after, let alone social media, right? So it's just different, and you have to be able to navigate. And it's easy to say you just think before you post something, but in the heat of the moment, it's just so easy to get something out there, and then it's tough to walk it back now, that's all.
Yeah. Well, again, you provide a great reminder on, sort of the 24-hour rule, right? Our
Yeah.
environment is very divided, set up to where, that old school rule of 24-hour rule. You're feeling heated, and that's okay. Just
Yeah.
sleep on it for 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, as someone who is recruiting, who's constantly evaluating behavior, both in person, and do those things are those ever part of the evaluation process? And I guess I just want to help our student athletes to understand, like, do things that they post on social, does that factor into your decision on whether you're
It
going to
it
pursue
definitely can. Yeah, I think it can have a place, and if it's a one off here and there, I think it's easier to overlook or to talk to this young student athlete about. But if it's a constant thing where it's, I don't know an example necessarily, but it's constantly complaining about something or venting on a daily basis, or inappropriate kind of the language and things like that all the time, it could be a bit of a red flag. And ultimately it becomes on the recruiter anywhere you're at. It's like you'll see certain things on socials, but you'll also get a feel for the student athlete when you're talking to them in person and seeing them. So if those things are the same and it's a negative, then you're probably not recruiting that kid. But if they're a little bit different, then you have to evaluate kind of what you're willing to accept, what you think that may be able to be changed, versus um, if it's completely negative, you might just it's not worth it. I might avoid that. And so it's just finding the balancing act, and there's really no art, no science behind it. It's more of an art to what you're willing to kind of accept versus not accept as a program, as a staff.
Mm, I love that reminder. It's again, I had a good friend who always used to talk about, like, attitude always reflects leadership, right?
Yeah,
And bad habits are either taught or allowed, right? I
yeah,
guess
for
so good
sure.
habits are taught or allowed too.
Yeah, the fun one I always used to going back and forth. I think JP and I, when I was at Carleton, was like, either coach or do you allow it. So we used to always joke about that one and go back and forth with it, but it holds true. It's you can either coach them up to do something different, or you're just going to allow it to happen. And it's just that line you have to walk. And obviously in today's day and age, it's becoming a tougher line to toe at times with the young people here and there. And so it's just a reminder of it, and you kind of mention it to some people and see if they change, and you can be honest with that part and say, listen, some of the stuff you're posting is a little bit different. Do you really feel that way? And just understand that it may have a negative connotation to your recruitment. And and if you remind me and see if they change, but if you don't say anything as well, it's what do you expect to change, right? So it's, if you really want that student athlete, you try to work with them on that stuff, and show them the way, and try to teach them a little bit on that light.
Mm. It speaks volumes about who you are as a leader, right? Like you could easily say, "Don't do this, don't do that," but it's great that you will prompt with a question and just help them arrive at, "Hey, yeah, maybe this action, this behavior isn't maybe going to help me get to where I say I want to go."
For sure. It's something you always have to do, and it's ever evolving too, right? It's different now than it was 3 years ago, let alone 2 years ago, and or way before when I first started coaching. It's everything changing, and you always have to adapt with it. And it's definitely can be challenging for at the coaching world, because there's always different things that pop up, and you just kind of navigate your way through it.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, one of the unique things about Queens is what I find really unique is that you have a lot of great football minds, football coaches there, but more importantly, you have great human beings there, right? It's interesting that a lot of your coaches, a lot of your leaders are kind of at that same stage of life now or starting to enter it.
Yeah.
What is that like having such a staff that is, they're on the same page, but you have a lot of young and up and coming and emerging leaders. What has that process been like for you?
It honestly, it's been awesome. It's a great group of guys to work with, and a great group of people around, and to be at the same stage of life is kind of refreshing, because everybody's going through kind of similar processes, whether it's with the kids in a daycare issue, or just getting the kids together and seeing them kind of grow and do that. It's honestly been a lot of fun, and it makes the balance honestly between work and life a lot easier. Um, it just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe in a sense, but it's really just, it's refreshing with that, because to know, okay, I have this challenge with whether it's a daycare issue or somebody being sick or having an appointment, and you look over and three of the other guys are doing the same thing. So it just allows, it's built that trust as well too, that okay, you can step out of the office and go handle a family situation, or whether it's going to speak at my kid's school tomorrow morning and things like that, that nobody blinks an eye. It's like, yep, go do that. That's important, and we're all putting that importance on that stage of life as well. And having good people just makes that easier, and the trust is there. That doesn't matter if I'm in the office 10 hours a day or 5 hours a day, that we're going to get the work done that we need to, and we're still going to be on the same page. But I think it's more on the support side for the balance, that everybody is kind of going through that same stage, just makes it a lot easier on a support side. And if it's a rough night with the kids not sleeping or something like that, everybody understands, everybody's been there or going through it,
Yeah.
and it just makes those things easy, and common ground to discuss life outside of football as well too. And it doesn't always have to be just football around the office. We can talk about life and talk about the kids, the development you're seeing, how they're playing together and things like that, which makes it a ton of fun. And honestly, even after our spring game here, I think there was probably 10 little kids run around the field after, with moms and dads chasing them around. So it just makes it fun, and it adds that extra level of enjoyment into it to see that happening after the game. And it's all the kids where they're running around the offices, drawing on all the whiteboards, moving everything around. And it's just fun seeing them kind of all hang out together. And it's a pretty cool stage for all of us to be in.
Yeah, it's you can definitely sense like that sense of family, right? And that's one of the biggest cliches in sports, as you know, right? Everyone
Mm-hmm.
talks about family, but is it really a family feel? And I think of just my experience, being around Queens on a game day. Like I felt like it was like, hey, come up here, grab a slice of pizza, invite in the office. Like it was very much on a personal level, like very inviting. You see it even, when we had the opportunity, I think it was 2 years ago, where you guys came down, we went to an Argos game. Even you,
Yep.
like my son was with us, and he's a little quieter. And you're like, hey, is the little man okay? And so it's just really like those attention to detail, or even what made was last year seeing how Friday after walkthrough, like the day's done early. We're
Yep.
not going to grind it out for 10 or 12 days. We're going to finish early so people can go home and be with family. Like little things like that and those practices, like it's awesome.
Yeah. That's a big part of it, is just understanding the balance and knowing you need to be in our profession. It's not easy to be around all the time, but as often as you can, and finding those little windows to whether it's end early on a Friday or on a Monday, like, no, we're going home for dinner, and then you can come back if you want to. But having that flexibility to do that because we're all kind of around the same stage is makes it so much easier. Um and everybody getting along well too. Like if you don't have good people working with you, like that doesn't happen, or it's not as easy to do. And I think we have some great people here that make that a little bit easier to attain that balance for sure.
Good. Good. So I'm curious, obviously, things are growing at Queens, right? It's you see it, you feel it, anyone that's been around it. What do you see as continuing to what does this next iteration of Queens football look like from your perspective? Where do you want to see it go?
I just to continue to develop kind of great student athletes on and off the field. And I think we have a great group of people here. I think we obviously have had some changes in the coaching staff, and a great opportunity for Ben to move on, and really excited and happy for him. And now we get the opportunity to bring somebody new in, and elevate kind of some roles that people have. So I think that's a great thing to see how that's going to go. And just more opportunity to work with student athletes as a new group coming in, and to see the great things that they're going to be able to do, and keep building this program to reach our ultimate goals of continuing to be the most respected team on campus, and to win some football games. And I think we're in a good position to keep doing that. And new challenges present each year, with whether it's new coaches, whether it's new players, and it's just fun working together to overcome that adversity and overcome those obstacles, and put the product out on the field. And really excited about the team that we have going forward, and our opportunities to be successful, and to be in the running for those championships. And that's kind of what drives you as a coach, is that competitive side, but also just seeing what our student athletes are going to do is always a fun thing here, and always new and exciting things that they're getting into, and they're doing. And whether it's what Ashton was able to win this year with that top 8 kind of Governor General Award, which they get to go to, that was a cool experience. And to continue to meet different alumni, and see what they're doing. I think there's always something new that can pop up here, and you learn something different about whether it's your students and alumni, yourselves. And I think continuing to learn and grow and develop is something that we're always doing here, and it's excited to see where that's going to go.
It's interesting, like as you share that, right? And again, it speaks volumes to you as a leader, right? It's that question of as an effective leader, it's not a question of if the people that you are leading are going to move on. It's just a question of when. And
Yeah.
I love how you preface that when you help someone elevate to their next opportunity, it just creates another opportunity for someone new and emerging to step in and get to where they want to go next.
Yeah, and it's fun to see that the young guys step up in roles, especially in spring. You see a lot of development for some of the younger players that we had that maybe didn't get the opportunity in the fall, and to see them kind of be able to grow and develop is pretty exciting. And then seeing your older guys kind of take the leadership role too is a great feeling to see. And you see new voices pop up and new leaders emerge on the team, and guys surprise you kind of and step up earlier than you think they may have done. So it's always great to see kind of that, and see what the dynamic of the team is going to be. And also see kind of even coaching changes as those grow and happen. It's pretty excited to see kind of a younger guy now maybe take a different role. And as tough as it is to lose a coach on staff, you're really excited for them to take the next step. And it's pretty special. Like, it's good being able to coach Ben when he was here, and then be able to work with him now, and then see him go on and take the next step in his career is pretty exciting as well. And understand like what our coaches are doing here too, and seeing Nez become a dad and things like that are always pretty fun to see. And you see people in a different light, and it's kind of cool to see everybody grow and everybody do those different things on staff. And as kind of the old guy on the full-time staff here, it's kind of nice to see kind of everybody kind of developing and going, and it's pretty fun. It just shows how lucky I am to work with a group of people here that we have, and the group of players. And I definitely feel very fortunate. You started off with obviously blessings on this call, but it's very fortunate to work with this group that we have here, because it makes it fun to come to the office, to hang out, to talk to people about football and life. And then just referencing whether it's kind of Jeff, our equipment guy, who's around and just hanging out just because he wants to, and have fun because he's been here since the 60s and things like that. And having kind of guys that have been around that you can talk to about things as well too. So it's just so much fun to come to this office and to work. And we're just lucky to have what we have here in terms of facilities and people, and just not taking that for granted is the big part. And just a reminder of what a great situation this is, and just want to work as hard as we can to kind of to give back to the people to make sure that they know how much it means to us, and hopefully we can show that with the product on the field and the student athletes that we develop here too.
Hmm. It's interesting. Again, you and I being at a similar life stage, do you find it interesting when you kind of get to that point where you start to realize, like, a rising tide lifts all boats, and you start to be like, oh, when one person wins, when one person winning, we all win. And it's kind of like you said, it just becomes a fun, like life just starts to feel a little bit different.
Yeah, it's hard to describe in a sense, but it's just seeing guys, whether it's somebody that struggled with a certain technique, all of a sudden get it, and the excitement that they have, and versus somebody doing well academically and then saying, "Hey, coach, like here's the grades I got this semester. Like, look how much far I've come," and it's exciting to see that. And when they start to get it and develop, it's those little things that kind of keep pushing you forward and showing, okay, all the work that we're doing is meaningful, because either getting the new technique, they're able to execute the play, their marks have gotten to the level that they want, or they get into a grad school, or they get this job down the road that they really want, whether it's summer or after university. So it's those things that are pretty cool to see, and definitely make the work that you're putting in worthwhile, to see those little successes all the time. And you're right, it does lift you up for sure. And it's those little things you got to keep celebrating. And it's easy today to always find the negatives and that sort of stuff, but to see all these little positives that pop up just make it that much easier and that much more rewarding to see the people you're working with and the people that you're working for kind of get those little wins.
Absolutely. So I want to be respectful of your time and energy. Again, as someone who's been around, there's definitely something special about the Queen's experience. I'm curious if this conversation is, piqued interest, or if people want to start exploring what life could look like by being part of Queen's football. What's the best way people can follow along, learn more about it? Yeah, I would love to know.
Yeah, I think they do a great job with the Queens football Instagram account. Just to follow and kind of see the good things that are going on here, whether it's showing off our facilities and our programs and things like that, or following us as the coaching staff on socials, because we try to have a good presence out there, and just kind of connecting with us in any one of those ways, and learning more about the program, about what we're doing. We're trying to attract the best and brightest student athletes from across the country, and it's definitely cool to have a national recruiting program as well, and seeing kids come from all over the place to your school, and you get to learn about the different experience that they're going from their hometowns and their backgrounds and things like that. So I think following the program on socials is a great way to go. Connecting with any of our coaches, especially Coach Nez on the recruiting side, does a great job of getting people information about the program and following along that way. And honestly, coming to Queens to see the great events that are here, whether it's showing up in a couple weeks for the flag that's happening, the tournament that's going to be here, it'll showcase our facilities, and then coming out to a game in the fall. And Kingston's a great football community for that, and great community support for everything that goes on at Queens, football and other sports as well too. And it's just a great place to come watch a game, whether it's the summer league, whether it's the flag, whether it's us in the fall. It's a great stadium to come out and be a part of the football community. And I think if any football junkies, especially in Ontario, need to make the trip to Richardson Stadium to see what's going on here, because it's a fun place to watch, and it's a great product on the field that we're putting together as well.
Absolutely. And we'll be happy to share all of those social media links, all of that information in the description, either on the podcast or on YouTube. And a side note, I think you just reminded that obviously, your focus is on the men's tackle side of things, but Queens is hosting Flag Nationals next week. It has hosted UEFA tournaments. It's hosted high school games. So it's really interesting how it's not just, the men's tackle. Like, this is football. Like, Queens is,
Mhm.
football, right? So that idea of football for all. So
Yeah, it's a great football community, and I think they showed up pretty well for the Vandy Cup last year, and I know they'll do the same again this year when we host it again. And it's a great place to watch a game, and outstanding stadium right off the lake, and it's a cool spot to be in. And they've done a great job, our alumni, with the facilities and our department of maintaining everything. And it's honestly a great place to watch a sporting event and a great sports community. So as they're traveling through, Kingston's a great stop for all of that stuff for sure.
absolutely. Uh, so, brother, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for, the great husband you are, the great dad, the great coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. It's interesting. From this conversation, I really start to understand how your sort of diverse, pathways in life of why, as I mentioned to you before, I feel like, yeah, we can always have great conversations about football. We do have some rich conversations, but I always feel that our conversations are so much deeper, right? Like football connects us, but we always seem to have conversations that are much deeper about life and things like that. So I just want to thank you for reminding me that, yeah, football is great, but it is a vehicle to teach and reinforce greater life lessons. So thank you for that, brother.
With this, thank you for the opportunity to come and chat. And it's always great to chat with you about football and life. And I love the conversations we have, and definitely looking forward to many more the next time we see each other in person as well too. And which I'm assuming will be in a couple weeks when you're up here for flag stuff. So it'll be fun to connect again when you're up here. And just appreciate you doing this, and thank you for having me on. It's always fun to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, Coach Bechmanis dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually helps you create greater results in your life. So, my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, or just someone you feel would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.